Hello, I'm here during the lunch rush with Janice, who owns her own food truck.
Best cheesesteaks in town.
Janice traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for her food truck business. We're here where she needs us most.
They sure are.
We make it so easy for her to save, with customised coverage that grows with her business. Sorry, I just get so emotional talking about saving folks money.
Not this onion I'm chopping?
It's just so beautiful. Oh yeah, no, it's the onion.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Yay Networks.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. We are back with part 2 of the art and science of plant-based sweeteners and gluten-free flours. And I am joined by Amy Davis, registered dietitian with Swerve, and 3 incredibly brilliant instructors who are serving as 3 of our instructors at an event we have. 4 chefs that our Ochsner Eat Fit team is hosting to bring in our chefs, our pastry chefs from around the state to educate on the art and science of plant-based sweeteners and gluten-free flours. So we are joined by Carolyn Ketchum of All Day I Dream About Food and Chef Zach Miller. He is an instructor with Gnocchi, the New Orleans Culinary and Hospitality Institute, and also Ben McLaughlin, who y'all have heard him join me on this podcast before. He's an expert in low-carb baking. He's always a blast, and he's done the segment with me for years on WGNO. So these 3 have come together really at our request. So our Ochsner Eat Fit team, the Swerve team, the Gnocchi team, we've pulled together these experts to essentially help us host this all-day workshop. So what we're covering is gluten-free breads, gluten-free, grain-free breads, baked sweets, frozen treats. So in part 1, we heard a lot about our 3 chef instructors that you're going to hear now, Ben, Carolyn, and Zach. We heard a lot about them, their background, what makes them the experts, and why we have roped them into this incredible workshop. And Carolyn dove in a bit deeper into what she's covering, and then also by telling us what she's covering in the workshop, what we can learn from her. So if you missed part 1, you're going to want to tune in to hear Carolyn Ketchum. She covers all types of things on gluten-free baking, but especially things that I learned, like, okay, when do you use xanthan gum versus protein powder as that gluten replacer, or how does she get just the right amount of crisp in her cookies, and her approach for perfecting her recipes for any nutritional need, any nutritional preference. So lots that we've already covered in part 1. And what you'll hear coming up in part 2 is all about sweeteners. So how do you use plant-based, natural, no-calorie sweeteners, of course, but how do you know what's just the right ratio of these sweeteners to use in your icing? How do you get the perfect amount of browning, not too much, and without drying it out? And Ben will share with us things like, how do you get the best color saturation with the natural plant-based food colors? And Zach has, if y'all aren't familiar with Zach Miller, he's an instructor with Gnocchi, and he just has such a scientific approach, but in a really fun way of, let's figure out, because that's what, baking is an art, baking is also a science. And so he actually walks us through real time an experiment that he's got going on. We had to follow up with him after to get the results of the experiment. It was basically using the different plant-based sweeteners and how do they affect the freezing temperatures, because some of them were newer sweeteners, they're newer on the market, and he hadn't had the chance to use them yet. So he'll share with us in real time what he's got, I would say what he's got brewing, but it's not brewing, what he's got freezing in his blast freezer. And then we catch up with him actually after, so that we didn't make you wait. You'll hear the results of this at the end of this podcast. But lots that I'm learning from these instructors for this chef culinary workshop that we're hosting, lots that I'm learning, lots that they're learning as they're doing it and learning from each other. So it's really, really cool stuff. So if you haven't listened to part 1, take a listen. And now on to part 2. So Ben, tell us what you've got coming up, what you are covering in your class at our Eat Fit Chef Innovation Workshop at Gnocchi.
I will speak more like some baking tips and baking tricks. that I've learned in the process. So, for instance, with the chocolate tart we're going to make, I add just even a dollop of sour cream to the ganache glaze that goes on top of it. Because with the sugar replacement or with Swerve, I can't get the sheen. It's more matted with a sugar replacement, and that little bit of sour cream gives me that glaze. Excuse me, that shiny glaze that I'm looking for. And so that's probably some of the things that I will be speaking to in mine are those kind of tricks. I also don't overcook. I want to be real careful about overcooking better for you or items made with almond flour or coconut flour, especially even using sugar replacements, because at times where sugar brings moisture that's been heated into your baked good, a sugar replacement does not do that. So sometimes if it's a little jiggly in the middle, I'm okay with that. Like, go with it. Let it cook a little bit in the pan when you take it out of the oven, and it's going to work out. So
Because otherwise you could risk drying it out if you cooked it maybe the quote
Correct.
normal
And
time.
Cornbread, it's like dry cornbread that's been sitting on the stove top for about 5 days.
Yeah, that's a really great tip but with both the flours and the sweeteners, they can tend to dry out baked goods.
So oftentimes, though, you've got the lack of the moisture from sugar cooking in a baked good, but almond flour will excrete fat. So you also have to take that into account. That kind of goes into the play that Carolyn was speaking to, that like it's a whole new ballgame. And you have to figure out the factors that are going to give you what you want.
So what are some of your other kind of key baking tips that you're covering for gnocchi, but that our listeners can learn from here? That are some of the key takeaways, I guess, things that you hear people say and you're like, oh, let me make your life so much easier right now.
Yeah, so I would say even for like a frosting or an icing is my favorite, because back in the day when I first started, I think when I was using like Martha Stewart icing recipes, she'd use 3 to 4 cups of powdered sugar with maybe 2 sticks of butter, which I can't even imagine in this day and age using that much powdered sugar with butter. Whereas like, for instance, the Swerve powdered sugar replacement, I may use a half to a 3/4 of a cup with 2 sticks of butter, and I sweeten the taste, because at this point, everyone has a different palate of sweetness. So you can just keep adding a little bit. It's easier to add some than to take it out, but I would not look at like traditional powdered sugar frosting buttercream recipe and say, well, I'm going to put in 3 to 4 cups of the natural sugar replacement powdered sugar. Because that was probably my first lesson I learned, because it was not pretty, nor did it taste good. Just so
Would you say cut the amount in half, or maybe about 25% to start with?
I would just say, literally for me, it's about a half cup to a cup, 2 sticks of butter for me. And that's my palate again.
Normal recipes call for 3 to 4 cups, and you're saying half to 1 cup?
Correct. I grew up with those normal of 3 to 4. Some people, that may shock a lot of people, but that's what I grew up eating my whole life.
I'm like, wait, let me restate this. Am I hearing this correctly?
At least you baked it. I mean, we just ate the frosting out the can, so you're just ahead of me there.
At least yours was homemade.
Take them to school for break, y'all. The tubes of green icing. Green icing.
No.
I had green tea for like three days, but I would eat that at break in school, which is cuckoo.
Speaking of green tea, talk to us about the colors you use, the food colors, because this is an easy one, but your favorite brands and kind of what you do on food colorings.
Yeah, so I try not to use artificial food colors. Carolyn, you may have to support me here a little bit. But I found Indian Tree, Watkins have come out with some natural food colors. They're not going to be as bright as we grew up with. I even just discovered, and I know there's another company who makes sprinkles with Swerve. I can't remember their name, Amy. But I discovered Watkins has some natural food color sprinkles.
Yeah, the Sprinkles Company. That's the name.
Yeah, the Sprinkle Company. They're on Etsy.
They're on Etsy.
Yep. And she does a great job of those.
Yeah, and she has tons of different colors, Christmas themes, holiday themed, anything you want. Yeah. She's got it. Really sweet girl too.
So the Sprinkle Company support a small business. It sounds like it with the Sprinkle Company.
Yeah, give her some support. She's fabulous. The food color that I like are these little powders. They're called Color Kitchen, and they're vegetable-based powders. But unlike, they can be incredibly vibrant, and they tend to continue to develop. So if you put some yellow in and you think, oh, that's a pretty yellow, well, it's going to become neon yellow in about half an hour. So just wait. So go less than you think with those and wait for especially in frostings, and wait for the color to develop. But they do very true to life colors. What they don't really get right is red, because that's a difficult one. So I often use beet powder or raspberry powder for that.
Really, really great tips. And I'll take more vibrant than what you think you're going to get than the other, because a lot of times the natural plant-based food colors, they fade in color.
Yeah, they look so
True.
dull.
And I think Carolyn, I think that we have an Eat Fit King cake that is shipped around the region and to retailers around. And the first year we were like, what the heck happened? There's no color on this, but there was, but it was evaporating. So then they ended up having to work to see how did they basically super saturate it and what else can basically help that color stick to the swerve crystals, the swerve sprinkles that were on the top. And so oversaturation, I'll take that versus your stuff fading to beige. Okay, so the natural plant-based food coloring is really good. The Sprinkle Company, we can support a small business, women-owned business. Watkins, I find, has a really nice price point compared to, is it Indian Tree, Ben?
India Tree.
India Tree, yeah. That's expensive. Yeah, so we've got options, I think, on the colors. And Ben, talk to us too, when you're looking at baking, how do you decide if you're using, and just for our listeners, confectioners versus granular?
Yes, I always say, so confectioners can be used for many reasons, for multiple purposes. So, for instance, ice cream, when you're looking for that creamy texture, a creme brulee, a ganache, a pot de creme, that kind of thing. It's perfect so that you don't get that grit that you may experience in a more of a granulated sugar replacement. That's just something to be aware of. So I use confectioners in that capacity. Now, granular, I'll use a granulated sugar replacement I'll use in cookies and cakes and brownies and things like that. I don't have an issue with that. But your typical glaze and icing that you use powdered sugar for, yes. But if it has any kind of creamy base, even a cheesecake, use powdered sugar replacement. That's my point of view on that.
And the last question I have, but then Amy, if there's others that I'm missing to ask Ben about on the baked sweets, and Chef Zach and Carolyn, y'all chime in too. Oh my God, what was my question?
I don't know.
Hold on.
What
You're
was
saying
it?
that.
I'm trying to figure out how you have not spoken about the focaccia. You probably have some frozen in your freezer right now.
The focaccia?
Bring your questions. You eat that stuff all the time. You love that
it. I love Carolyn's focaccia. I'd like to take a minute to talk about Headspace, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. So you may have tried meditation before and it just didn't go so well, or maybe you felt like you were doing it wrong. So if enhancing your mental well-being is part of your self-care plan, then you're going to want to check out Headspace. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations in an easy-to-use app. It is one of the only meditation apps that advances the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. I love that Headspace is just so customizable for whatever we're dealing with right now. Whatever the situation, Headspace really can help. If we're overwhelmed, Headspace has a 3-minute SOS meditation for you. If we need help falling asleep, Headspace has wind down sessions that people swear by. And Headspace's approach to mindfulness can help to reduce our stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and truly increase our overall sense of well-being on our schedule, anytime, anywhere. We all deserve to feel as happy as possible. And Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/fueled. That's headspace.com/fueled for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now. Head to headspace.com/fueled today. Browning. What are the tips for browning of the, especially sweets that we kind of want that little caramelization? What are some suggestions for getting browning and crisping? So that chocolate chip cookie to be maybe a little bit crisp, and also maybe a little bit, it might not be caramelized, might not be the best word, but that kind of light golden. What's some tips for this on the baked sweets made with the plant-based sweeteners?
For sure. So a few points on here is that, for instance, we've spoken of the swerve and Amy spoke about erythritol, but we also throw in starchy root plants. Now those, that inulin, those fibers, those allow swerve to brown and caramelize. So you get that functionality. I've even used some of the whole earth baking that where they throw the xanthan gum. I know that allulose browns. I think Carolyn's had a different experience with like a creme brulee. Yeah, it can over brown sometimes and bake good. And so can swerve. So like if I'm making a cake that I know is going to go past 20, 25 minutes in baking a cake, I'm going to cover it probably at 25 minutes with aluminum foil or something, or even turn down the temperature of my oven a little bit, just to prevent that over browning, because it's just, I just don't enjoy it. It's not fun to my palate. And I would say the same again. I'm somewhat new to allulose and playing with it, but I would say the same to allulose. You have to look for those opportunities to cover those because of some of those additives that allow it, and those fibers that allow it to brown and caramelize. Sometimes a little too much. Some though, like for instance, when I have used just plain erythritol and I make a creme brulee, erythritol and xylitol, and I make a creme brulee, I cannot get a torch crust.
That's what I was
Carolyn,
thinking.
I don't know, or Chef Zach, if you've had that experience, but I can't get that. It needs that fiber or something of the sort. Even sometimes, that's what I'll have to say on that. I'll try to go somewhere else, but we're good on that one.
Well, I was just going to say, I will tell you, and I actually shot a Zoom video for this Quit Sugar Summit I'm doing, showing them how to make some cookies. And I said, if you want a crisp cookie, don't even put a tablespoon of allulose in there. It must be an erythritol-based sweetener like Swerve, because otherwise it will be cakey, it will be soft, it'll like sort of, you could take it out of the oven and it'll bend in your hand. So if you're looking for something that has snap, it has to be erythritol. It has, in my opinion, it has to be Swerve, but you just won't get the same thing. And I will tell you that even a tablespoon of allulose will keep meringue from crisping. It'll keep cookie, like anything where you need truly crisp texture, even the littlest bit, it will mess you up.
Does that mean that it's absorbing moisture more or holding moisture more?
I think it's just the nature of erythritol, of allulose, because and I will say with allulose, like it does tend to do better in like liquids and like soft textures. Like it will never recrystallize, but erythritol, you'll get that crisp, that snap, that crunch, and you just don't get that with allulose. So it's almost like thinking of allulose better as like in a cakey, in a muffin, like something that you want a cakey, soft texture in. Sometimes allulose can be a great option there, but if you want that crispiness, Carolyn, just like what you're saying, erythritol is definitely going to be a better option.
It's interesting you say that, because we have our a book that we're working on zero proof cocktails. It's the Eat Fit Guide to Zero Proof Cocktails, and we're working on the simple syrups. And we're doing, actually, Amy and I will be back here at my house tomorrow night, y'all, doing a taste test of these different simple syrups, because we have allulose simple syrup, Swerve-based simple syrups, and then also like a monk fruit or stevia sweetened simple syrup, just because they're going to vary so much in texture, consistency. Some are going to be more honey and nectar-like. Others are going to be really thin if it's a monk fruit or stevia. But what I noticed of what Amy just said is when we make the Swerve simple syrup, it tastes delicious. But if we put it in the fridge and we're keeping it there for a few days, it crystallizes and settles out, and we have to then kind of reheat it, reconstitute it. I've had the allulose simple syrup that we made almost 2 weeks ago in my fridge, and it has stayed in suspension and didn't. So I think it's just completely different properties. So even if you take granular allulose, and when we say allulose, I had somebody in my office today and they said, what are you saying? Allulose? And I was like, allulose. And I was like, we can spell it, but we'll have it linked to on here. But they may taste similar. If you go, well, the Swerve tastes similar to allulose. I can't tell that much difference in sweetness. The functionality is vastly different.
Absolutely.
So on that note, Chef Zach, let's talk the frozen sweets that you're going to be doing, because when we talk functionality of these sweeteners, how they affect freezing temperature of these frozen desserts is tremendous.
Yeah, it's interesting to play around with, because this is another one of those things where I talked about before, is that it's not just do I make it sweet and then freeze it? Well, because regular sugar will suppress freezing. That's why if you don't have enough sugar, it's going to be really hard or really brittle. Or if you have too much, it's not going to freeze, or it's going to be syrupy. It's going to kind of fall apart on you. So I'm curious, like the others, I haven't really worked a tremendous amount with allulose. It's still relatively new, especially to me. But I'm curious, it could have it's where it's not very good for baking because it's not going to crisp, or it's going to be, sounds like it absorbs a lot of moisture. So it's not good for something crispy. It actually could be very great in something like an ice cream, or cooking sugar for like a softer meringue or something like that, where it's going to act to prevent crystallization. It's something that we use. We use glucose syrup in more conventional pastry to prevent crystallization in certain things. And this would be a great thing to, actually, I've got an experiment in my freezer right now that I'm going to test tomorrow when it's frozen to see with allulose, to see how it did with that in comparison. I'm doing a side by side. So just like my curiosity is peaked with it now. Now that I've got all these things in my hands, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can try this.
So Chef Zach, I'll have the handheld recorder at our Gnocchi conference. So we're going to have to get, because it's like dun, 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 like the suspense. We've got to provide the answer to our listeners in this podcast so they don't have to wait. But we will do a review of the freezing temps and how allulose affects freezing compared to Swerve and that. So you've got the experiment as we speak happening.
Cool. Well, I will tell you, I've experienced it for things that I'm trying to set overnight. Allulose will set, but it'll take like 48 hours. Like if you make a mousse or a lemon curd, or it'll take like 48 hours.
Wow.
Finally, so who wants to wait that long? Not me personally.
Right.
And in ice creams and things, at least in a home freezer, and I don't know about a commercial freezer, in a home freezer, it takes a lot longer to set and stays too soft. So for ice creams and things, I have to do half and half, like half Swerve, half allulose.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been reducing my sugar a little bit with it, or the sugar replacer, I should say, with it, and compared to what I would normally put in with sugar. So I've dropped about 5 to 10% of my recipes as I've been going through so far with it, and playing around with certain things. But I find you're going to use a little bit less of it. And the interesting thing about this is, there's some things as far as like using different fats as well. So getting away from a lot of using more like coconut milk or things like that, as opposed to heavy cream with certain things. And for me, what I found is, and I think you kind of touched on a little bit, is setting your expectations with things. And I think where you can drive creativity in it, instead of just trying to do, I want to do a straight up substitution for this and try it and have it make it taste the same. Well, you're not really going to do that, because coconut milk tastes like coconut milk. It doesn't taste like heavy cream. But why not run with that? Like, okay, well, I'm going to use coconut milk in it, but I'm going to do something tropical with it, and I'm going to run with that. And I think that's where, as you go through with this, you're setting your expectations. It's not going to be exactly the same. And at some point, well, why should you expect it to be exactly the same?
Right.
So I think that's kind of been my approach with a lot of these things too, is that, well, it's not going to be exactly the same as this certain thing that you're used to with it's got all the fat and all the sugar and all these different things in there. But you can make something that's really beautiful that maybe it just goes in a different direction with it. And that's kind of where I'm looking to go with some of these things. And with my class, we're looking at, and really my goal with it is it's geared towards professionals and people who want to experiment with these things as well. So I'm trying to gear what I'm doing more towards base recipes that will go for that people can manipulate and change and make their own. So if I'm going to do something that's a raspberry sorbet, well, they can do a mango sorbet. They can do a strawberry sorbet, and they can use the same ideas, the same principles to it, and apply it to whatever they want to do. So if they get back to their own kitchen, it's like, well, I don't want to do these 3 or 4 different things that I learned in this class. I want to do these other things. They're able to grow with it as well. So instead of taking ice cream, well, I can do a vanilla ice cream, but what else can I infuse into it? Can I do a tea ice cream? Can I do a coffee ice cream? Things like that. And if I don't have an ice cream machine, what else can I do? So now it's like, look, I can do a granita. I can do a still frozen dessert that I just need a freezer for. I don't need a $5,000 ice cream machine or a $20,000 ice cream machine. So I'm blessed to have here at the school. It's a blessing to have these things, but most people don't have $25,000 worth of equipment, or $50,000 if you count my blast freezer. That's $50,000 worth of freezing equipment that I have at my disposal. So, can you do it without all that stuff? Yes, you can, and I want to make it kind of approachable to everybody with those things in my class. So.
You have to keep me bites of everything, okay?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll have a big buffet at the end with everything. So I think I want to try everybody else's stuff too. It's really I'm bummed too. I want to take these other classes too. So.
It's so true. So
I just purchased liquid glucose because I've been trying to figure out the ice cream mystery. Now I'm actually taking a class with the founder of Milk Bar right now.
Ooh.
You know, it is opposite again of what we're doing. I just want to get back to basics, get a little food science under me. But they use a little bit of glucose in their frosting and icing, which is so interesting. And at first I thought it was maybe glycerin, but no, it's glucose. And I was looking at the nutrition facts, but I was quickly just doing this while we were together.
You know, there's liquid allulose like the liquid allulose you could kind of try to sub in for if you're going, play with the glucose syrup and then end up switching to the allulose syrup to see if it does the same thing. I don't know that it would, but maybe it would.
that was my thought too.
Yeah, I think you actually have to mix it with glycerin and allulose. I think you need the thickness of the glycerin and the sweetness of the allulose and kind of create that concoction. Because I actually used allulose in my frosting instead of glucose. And I felt like it was a little too liquidy, more liquid than I couldn't get the body in the frosting I wanted. I feel like it was meeting some kind of viscosity or thickness to it. I was missing that. Okay, sorry, Molly.
No, it's good. I love it. Chef Zach, I was going to ask if you can just elaborate a little bit more. So when we talk about like sugar prevents things from freezing, and I think the easiest way to think about that, like here in New Orleans, frozen daiquiris are a thing. I mean, people are like, wait, what? You can do a drive-through and get your daiquiri, and it's the sugar in them. It's alcohol and then sugar, and it's basically a slushy. It's an alcohol-containing slushy. But when we've actually worked with one of the daiquiri shops to try to use a plant-based sweetener, and I think that we tried to use Swerve. It was with one of the local daiquiri shops, and it didn't work. The freezing point was all wrong. So how do you adjust for this? Talk with us about the science of just how these sweeteners also affect freezing temp and what we can do with them to help manipulate this.
If it's getting too hard at your freezer, you can actually increase the sugar. That's normally what you would do it's traditionally what you would do with regular sugar as opposed to a sugar replacer. And you just do the same thing. You just add more of it, and it will just keep lowering that freezing point till you get to the point you have something softer. Or if they wanted to, they could add more alcohol. But alcohol also lowers the freezing point. Like if you put a bottle of vodka in your freezer, it doesn't freeze. It never freezes. So you'd have to use like liquid nitrogen, I think, to get that to freeze.
And then, as Carolyn said, the experience that she's had and what we kind of suspect with allulose because of the moisture containing is we hypothesize that allulose might have a closer impact on freezing temperature as regular sugar does.
Yeah, technically it's a sugar.
Right.
It's just a sugar that somehow doesn't affect your blood glucose. It doesn't register. It's the same way Swerve, which has carbs, doesn't actually register in the body. And I test this on myself, so I know. And so, I would like it is technically a sugar, so maybe it's partly the solution to things that are coming out too hard is a little more of it and a little less Swerve or erythritol. But I find personally, if I use all allulose, it won't set at all. I mean, I've had soft serve ice cream basically when it's just allulose. So for me, I've found a good combo is about half and half. Maybe I tend to go more Swerve and less allulose.
So far, our experience has been that allulose is inhibiting the freezing and keeping it softer. And so if you find that, man, when I'm replacing my frozen treat with Swerve, it's hard as a rock and I don't have that soft consistency, maybe going halvesies. And then as we speak, Chef Zach has his experiment sitting in the freezer, and I'll follow up with you with our handheld recorder and we can kind of get the rest of the story. So I think our last thing is if y'all can kind of each run through and like if our listeners are going to say, okay, what things do I need to try to always have on hand, basically as their toolkits to arm themselves with ingredients that they could have for gluten-free, grain-free, and plant-based sweetener baking and frozen treats. Ben is holding up the copy of Carolyn's book. So the ultimate guide to keto baking is number 1 in your toolkit. And then what ingredients to keep on hand? That's your Bible. Yes, we'll start there.
I think, your fresh seasonal fruit. If you're going for, especially with frozen desserts, you can incorporate them into your ice cream after it's gone. You can turn them into a sorbet. And we're talking about better for you. It's obviously an all natural product. You don't need to add a tremendous amount of sugar replacers to it to make it taste good. You just need to kind of enhance really what's already there. And there's a lot of tradition in other cultures of not so much a dessert tradition, but eating just fresh fruit after a meal. So not that I advocate for that because I would be out of a job, but I think that's a great way of kind of as a starting point of doing better, of making better choices. And I think we've talked about that. Just making better choices. What's a better choice, and eating better, and that's a good start. And you can incorporate those into with your baked goods, into these other things, and having them as part of a part of your dessert is starting with that. Because you look at your farmer's market, what's going on locally, especially this time of year in the summertime. You've got berries, you've got all these wonderful fruits and things like that going on. Take advantage of those things. I think that's a great starting point, and learn to accentuate those things. And incorporate those things into what you're doing. And I think instead of trying to force the issue of trying to do something that you don't try and force it. Go with something like that. And I think that's a great starting point for a lot of things. So that would be my first choice in my toolkit. So.
Yeah, I love that. And especially like when things are ripe and in season, you can even buy in bulk and freeze them. I mean, most fruits are really great frozen, and you can do all sorts of different things with that. So that's such a great point, Zach.
Yeah, if you're at the farmer's market and you see this flat of blueberries or strawberries and you're like, that's more than I need right now. So what? Yeah, like Amy said, freeze it. And Chef Zach, I'm so happy that you came right out of the chute with fruit as what to keep in your toolkit. Because let me tell y'all, this week I had some snark on my social media because we did a TV segment about ice creams and, all the different low carb ice creams and kind of ranking them. And we had the anchor do a taste test. And so we were talking about the different low carb ice creams on shelves and like which was the best and da 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 da. And somebody who doesn't usually like comment or anything, I think she was kind of maybe a lurker. She said, well, if you call yourself a dietitian, that's how I thought she's probably not a usual like person. If you call yourself a dietitian, why aren't you telling people to eat fruit instead of this ice cream? I was like,
Goodness.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying.
They're not going to.
Right. We're not talking about fruit. Right? Yeah. If you want ice cream, you want ice cream.
Give them the other option too.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, so to that point, though, it's great when we are talking about, hey, what things to keep on hand? Yes, your fruits. And then other things that you would say, if someone is kind of flipping through, let's just say it like this. If someone's flipping through one of Carolyn's recipes or looking at some of the recipes that Ben has created for Swerve, and you want to be able to have the things that if you're flipping through and you see it and you're inspired, what are those things to just keep in your cabinet that you don't have to like run out for a special thing?
Chocolate.
Like Baker's chocolate?
Baker's chocolate, cocoa powder, and and some of the unsweetened chocolates are usually sweetened with erythritol. I mean, not unsweetened, the no added sugar ones, because that's, I mean, for many of us, not everybody loves chocolate, but I'd say about 95% of us do, and that's a quick hitting. I need it sweet and I need it to be small, and I just want the flavor, and then I can be, then I'm good. And so if you're just looking for some little taste of something, it's a good way to do it. And even if it's unsweetened chocolate, because then you can make a ganache, like Ben said, that's easy. You can do ganache with coconut milk, which is fabulous. I have a coconut milk chocolate pudding that I love. It's still one of my favorites, that kind of thing. Like chocolate's kind of a quick hitting one, and it doesn't have to be with sugar. And chocolate by itself, particularly dark chocolate, has tons of health benefits.
Mm-hmm. So the cocoa powder or Baker's chocolate, or like you said, kind of the natural no sugar added chocolate. It's like a Lily's that might be a stevia
Like
sweetened chocolate.
Lily's, yeah, exactly. And those really, those go a long way, And so for me, like I'm taking my daughter up to a camp starting tomorrow, and I just have to drive her up to Seattle, and we're going to stay overnight. And I'm like, I wouldn't leave without chocolate, because when I need that sweet, and I'm at a restaurant that I can't have their beautiful, flourless chocolate cake or whatever, then that's my little solution. I go home and I have a square of chocolate, and I'm happy.
So chocolate, and then obviously plant-based sweeteners. So the variety of Swerves, confectioner, granular, brown, and then allulose, as we said, because again, over and over, we've heard each of you say that halvesies on this can be a really nice thing, and they each have very different properties. Okay.
Can I give one little plug though for Swerve?
Yeah.
The Swerve Brown is by far, I've tried all the different brown sugar replacements, and it not only looks like brown sugar, it smells like brown sugar, it's dense like brown sugar, and it bakes like brown sugar. It is, so if you're looking for like a chocolate cookie, the regular granular ones are good, but you put in the brown Swerve and it's amazing.
If you haven't tried the Swerve brown sugar replacer, when we did the kind of pre-huddle with the Gnocchi instructors who are going to be assisting Ben and Carolyn and Chef Zach was there as well, we had the different sweeteners for them to taste and try all of them. But when we passed the brown Swerve around, everyone's like, oh, and we were like, it just wafts out of there, the molasses undertones of it. It's incredible. Yes. Okay.
On that note, just to go with the brown, is that I do think that because of the vegetable glycerins in there, because there's a lot of brown sugar replacements out there, but they can be flowing out of a bag like a granular sugar, and that's typically not what I'm looking for. Like if I need to pack brown, I want it to pack, and I want to have the brown sugar experience. Now there is a little bit of vegetable glycerin in brown Swerve. I do think when you bake with it, and Carolyn and Chef Zach, you can tell me if you agree or not, but I do think when you bake with it, it actually potentially adds a little bit of moisture into your baked good, like sugar does, because of the glycerin that's in there.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I think that's why we love it so much as bakers.
Ben's got this big revelation. Carolyn's so laid back. She's like, yep. Ben's like, I think y'all back me up. Do I hear an amen?
Yeah.
I've had this discovery.
No one's ever said it out loud until
And okay, the last things, I think that Chef Zach's battery is about to die, so we might be losing him in just a minute, or he's switching to
a phone. On my phone now, so
okay.
Maybe use you on Zoom.
Okay, I gotcha. So we might lose your picture, but we'll hear you. So we've got our chocolate varieties, our plant-based sweetener varieties, obviously our coconut flour and almond flour. Almond flour is my preference over coconut flour, I believe Amy said.
Too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, of course, the Swerve bake mixes.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about those, but for those of you that don't know, Swerve, we've got our wonderful sweeteners, but we also have a line of gluten and grain-free bake mixes that use that almond and coconut flour combo. Obviously, they're sweetened with Swerve, but then we've got a vanilla cake, chocolate chip cookies, pancake and waffle mix, and a brownie mix. And I mean, oh my gosh, if you're new to the world of, better for you, keto baking, whatever you want to call it, you literally just add your wet ingredients and you bake it, and they're delicious. Like they're foolproof. Yeah. It's like a healthy Betty Crocker. So.
Also, how many recipes start with, Ben and his, as he says, kind of country bacon, how many of those types of how many of those types of recipes start with a box of yellow cake mix?
Yeah.
And so you could use the vanilla cake mix of the Swerve for that, because otherwise, if you're looking at those, you can't even start with it, but the Swerve mix for that. Let's take a minute to talk about Billy, sponsor of this week's podcast and an Allure Best of Beauty winner. Self-care and routine are more important than ever. So whatever we're using to get ready for the day should also help us feel amazing. Billy has recreated everyday essentials by delivering premium razors and high-performing body care directly to you. Go to mybilly.com to get their starter kit for just $9. That includes their award-winning razor, 2 refill blades, and a cult favorite magnetic holder. I love Billy's products, and you will too. They leave our skin feeling just so soft. And to express a little love for our show, go to mybilly.com/fueled. It's a small way that you can support us while also getting the best razor you'll ever own. It's just $9 to get your starter kit plus free shipping always. Go to mybillie.com/fueled. That's spelled mybillie.com/fueled. Last things in y'all's toolkits that you would say, if you're doing this, what are some things to keep on hand to be successful as you're flipping through Zach or Carolyn or Ben's recipes that would just be, you don't have to make that special trip?
Yeah, there are a few items that I don't make the special trip. So gelatin is one of them, specifically for cookies. I use that often for binding any gluten-free cookies that I make, just to help with that kind of gluten experience. I think also xanthan gum. Now, I have not used xanthan gum as much in baking as I feel like Carolyn has, but I do use it to thicken, like, we always struggle with this word, like my blueberry cheesecake bars have a blueberry, and Chef Zach, you may have to help me with this. I say compote, but I think it's compote or something of the sort. But I do use my xanthan gum. I just think it's more fun to say compote. But I use that to thicken up. But that's something that, again, and Molly, you and I have talked about this, a bag of xanthan gum, they do have some pouches now, but a bag will last you your lifetime.
Years.
So you don't use a lot of it.
So don't balk at the $14 price tag.
Yeah, and people balk at the price of the protein powders too. And I'm like, I bake pretty much every day, and it takes me months to go through a bag. So, if you keep it in your freezer, you're good.
Right.
I would say, since we're talking plant-based stuff, I would say coconut cream. You need, and I'm not talking the sweetened Coco Lopez stuff. I'm talking, the really thick stuff that they're now, instead of just marketing a can of coconut milk, they're marketing coconut cream on its own, because it's really useful in a recipe as a replacer for heavy cream.
Agreed.
I just started playing around with that recently, and it's fantastic. It's kind of a game changer. It's like, oh, I open the can, it's great. I can use this right out of the can. It's fantastic, and it's rich. It's everything you want it to be. So yeah,
it's delicious. And then I was gonna say like nut butters, nuts too, as well, for like a healthy plant-based fat.
So I think that sort of rounds it out. So for our listeners, if you're looking, okay, chocolate, number one, I like Zach starts with the fruit, Carolyn starts with the chocolate. And then the variety
I
of
was going to
sweeteners.
say peanut butter.
There we go. Me and you are.
Because Carolyn has a wonderful peanut butter mousse gel that takes no time to make. And like if I have a dinner party, I need to make a quick dessert that I know people enjoy, and I put it in like a little brandy glass to dress it up a little bit. She drizzles a little chocolate over it, and people are just wowed, and it literally took me like 5 minutes to make.
Yep. That's why it's called 5-minute peanut butter mousse.
It's incredible. All right. So we've got our fruit, our chocolate, our coconut milk / coconut cream, the unsweetened stuff. My tip on that is turn it over and look for the one that is just pure and doesn't have any add-ins. Even on that, I don't mind gums and stuff and other things, but in the coconut milk, I can really tell a difference in the texture or quality of it. Yeah.
That's a great point.
So I look for the ones specifically that are basically just coconut milk, coconut cream, and no other add-ins. And then the Swerve bake mixes, which just open up all these doors. Even if you're a really skilled baker, you can use those to kind of like as a jump start, a jumping off point for other recipes. The Swerve Confectioner's Brown and Granular, the Allulose. And then what are you going to bind all those gluten-free flours with? Your xanthan gum, the unflavored protein powders Carolyn talked about, maybe some gelatin. So that's sort of a rundown. If you've got those, you've got your flours, your sweeteners, your stuff you're going to bind it with. You're going to make it creamy with the coconut milk or coconut cream. You can add your chocolate or add your fruit, depending on if you're Zach or Carolyn. And then you've got kind of your basics. And then everything else is mostly stuff that you would have already on hand. But those are things that you may not have. And if you have those ingredients, it becomes so much more attainable. The inspiration hits you and you've got it right there at your fingertips. Okay, y'all. Any final takeaways, words of wisdom?
Have fun. Have fun with it. Like, I have a word of wisdom, because this is something I get very passionate about. Almost nothing needs to be thrown away. Even if it didn't come out the way you had anticipated, or it broke coming out of the pan, or your cookies, don't stay together, there are ways to repurpose it. Broken cake can become cake truffles. Burnt cookies, you can often scrape little bits off and still rescue them and make a parfait. There's almost no reason. These are expensive ingredients, and it pains me so much when people throw things away. So that is my little word of it.
How can you repurpose it? Yeah. How are you going to make some lemonade from those lemons, so to speak? All right.
I love that.
Any other takeaways, things that for our listeners? And if you think of something later, I'll have that handheld recorder for Zach's follow up. But I might be chasing each of you down too. All right.
I second Caroline's one. Have fun with it. It's you're baking, you're making desserts, you're making these delicious things. Have fun with it, even if it doesn't work out the way you plan. You just have fun with it, learn from your mistakes, and then keep going. It's just have fun. I really think that's a great takeaway.
And I would also throw out just as start. Carolyn has lots of cookbooks. There's recipes on the website. Look for recipes that have really good reviews, and start with those and read the reviews, see if they speak to anything to make it better. But there's plenty of resources out there to try to make it without making lemonade, or start making lemonade, not making lemons.
You won't have the lemons to begin with.
You get it.
And
you get it.
As Ben said, there's so many resources. Start with something tried and true. Swerve has an immense amount of recipes, many of which were developed by Carolyn, also by Ben.
Or Ben.
Or Amy, yes.
Yeah, she was saying Ben. Honestly, he's made a lot more than me, y'all. But I'll throw something on there and just get a little creative every now and then. Mango freeze or those little 3-ingredient peanut butter cookies. I like the easy ones.
Did you make those? You created them?
Oh, I found them on the internet one day, and I was like, I wonder if you can do this with Swerve, and sure enough, you could. So
our cafe sells those too.
Yep, there you go,
Amy. Okay, so Amy's remake of the 3-ingredient peanut butter cookie. I think, like you said, you saw that recipe. Okay, let's make it with Swerve. So your Swerve version. Not only do we sell it at our Fuel Cafe at Oshner Fitness Center, it is what we reward people with across our whole health and wellness system at Oshner. So when there's like
oh my gosh,
a department that does something like, oh, we want to give them a platter of cookies, it's like parentheses, eat fit cookies, because it's the 3-ingredient peanut butter cookies.
I did not know this. This just made my day.
That is the reward that goes out. In fact, we have these interdepartmental challenges we're doing for something that's kind of different departments that each month 2 different departments are kind of pitted together for this particular wellness challenge. And the winner every month gets a platter of your 3-ingredient cookies.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I love this. This is amazing.
Yes. So we take the advice. We do these things. So, y'all come up with these incredible recipes. We see it. We are able to then like work it in, and if someone doesn't want to make it themselves, we're providing this so that they can get it. And people are wild about it. They go so quickly.
Oh,
well, thank you to all of y'all for that. Okay. And thank y'all for spending so much time with us and sharing your expertise and like your enthusiasm for this, because it's such a fun topic. And it's these 3 brilliant minds brought together for this podcast, but also brought together for this Eat Fit culinary innovation event at Noki that really Swerve is helping to just like support and bring it all together. So thank you. And I can't wait to see y'all in person at the event.
Gonna be so much fun.
Yes.
I can't wait. Yeah, I'm so excited for it. I feel like this is a really innovative event and is really going to help a lot of chefs feel more comfortable and confident in the kitchen using these kind of maybe newish ingredients to them. So really looking forward to it. And thank y'all so much for all of your help with planning it and teaching it. And it's going to be a great event. So thanks, guys.
All right, y'all. So I promised that we would catch up with Chef Zach and air it in this episode so that we don't have to wait to see how his freezing temperature turned out, comparing the different types of plant-based sweeteners. And I think y'all are going to love this. All right. So Zach, first of all, thank you for spending the day here with us today and being our chef instructor for all of these pastry chefs and regular savory chefs. I know that they've learned a ton today.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this great event.
And so when we did our podcast interview, a few days before this innovation workshop, you left us kind of with a little bit of a cliffhanger. You have the experiment that was like happening in real time in your freezer, where you were testing basically the freezing points of different sweeteners and like ice creams and sorbets. So we've all been waiting in suspense. Amy and I could not wait. We couldn't wait for the event today, period, but we especially couldn't wait to hear from you the results of this. So tell us how it all turned out.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I had not experimented much before with how these different types of sweeteners work in tandem. And so I was, in curiosity got the best of me, and I was playing around with just to see what they would do. So my control was, I did an all sorbet sweetened entirely with Swerve, and then I used basically about a 30% ratio, I guess, for it really was a 30% ratio for allulose and Swerve. So about a third of my total sugar I used allulose, the rest remaining I used Swerve. And it was really interesting the way the experiment came out, because the way the allulose worked, the effect it had on there, the small amount, it had a softening effect on the frozen dessert. And the one that was all Swerve had a kind of a crumblier kind of texture, and I think you may have had some pictures of it from the event, and you can kind of see it has kind of a crumblier texture to it. The allulose really improved the texture a great deal with it, and it was really very, very interesting. So how those work in tandem. So I used that and then kind of applied it to the other desserts that I did for the event.
And it's really cool because, like, for that, I got photos of it, and so I'm asking as if I'm just hearing for the first time. But as soon as I got to Noki, like, I went into your lab. I'm like, tell me, show me. So we got photos of the differences, and I'll post them on my social, or we'll post them somewhere that, like, and I'll put the link where our listeners can hear. I'm not sure exactly where they're going to land, but what was cool is, like you said, the Swerve only, it sort of had. It was still sorbet, and if that was all you had, you would be like, all right, I can deal with this if you're trying to find a lower sugar alternative. But it was kind of that crumbly appearance. And the one that was basically the same amount of total sweetener, but you cut the Swerve by 1/3 and put the allulose in, it had a shine to it, a little bit of a glisten. And you referred to it in the class as an elasticity, which I think is a strange thing to think about in terms of sorbet. But it's a good thing. You sort of want that in a product like that.
Yeah, it is. It's a really weird word to describe food. It's in a positive way, but that's really, and I'm actually right now talking about, ice cream and sorbet technology with my students at Noki, and we talk about some of the other sugars that we use to kind of help achieve this. And really what it is, it adds like a smoothness to, or creaminess in a way, to ice creams and sorbets. And that's really the effect that the allulose had on there, which is a positive effect. It's something that you want. You've probably had other ice creams at some point, or frozen desserts or sorbets, even when you went to scoop them, and it kind of crumbled a little bit, or kind of broke apart a little bit. Both of you made with traditional sugars, and those made with the sugar replacers. So this kind of really combats that as a sugar replacer, which is really interesting, because you start as kind of the technology and these new products come out with these sugar replacers. Some of them have they're great products, but some of them have their strengths and some of them have their weaknesses. And now that we've got kind of this variety that we can play with, we can really achieve a lot of different things, where we can kind of overcome some of those shortfalls of certain sugar replacers.
I did a podcast a few weeks, maybe a month or so back, on kind of comparing. It was a review of the low carb, low sugar ice creams on the market. And kind of here's the ones nutritionally, kind of how they measure up, then also taste and texture wise. And on a few of them, like maybe two of the different brands, the way that I described them was like, it almost kind of was like a little foamy, a little crumbly. And in those kind of cases, I think it would actually work really well if those brands like worked in something like allulose for that reason. And when we had the conversation with Amy and with Ben and Carolyn, we were all together, like for the full scope of the podcast, we were all discussing the fact that allulose really kind of holds more moisture. And so if you're using it in a simple syrup, it stays in suspension better. It doesn't crystallize out. Carolyn referenced the cookies that she made, that they brown better, they caramelize better, but also they make it a softer cookie. And your experience with the sorbets. And then actually just this weekend, after we had the interview with all of y'all, I was inspired to remake a cookie that my sister-in-law had. It's a cookie it's a lot like that double chocolate chunk cookie from Great American Cookie Company, like if you've ever had that. And so that was like my favorite as a kid. And she made this cookie. It's almond flour, egg whites, and pretty basic ingredients besides that. But she used just regular sugar. That was what the recipe called for. And she was hesitant to try it with Swerve. She was bringing them to the beach event with like beach vacation with like all of our family. And she didn't want to mess it up, so she did it with regular sugar. So when I got back, I did it with exactly her recipe. And I replaced all the 3/4 of a cup sugar with Swerve. But I got kind of a puffy cookie. It was dry. It didn't have a lot of moisture to it. And it had a little bit of that coolant effect of Swerve. So then I replaced exactly what you just said with the sorbet, how you replaced basically a third of that Swerve with allulose. That was what I did this past weekend with that cookie. And so same amount of sweetener, but instead of 3/4 of a cup of Swerve, I did half a cup of Swerve and 1/4 cup of allulose. Oh my God, Zach, it was like all the difference in the world. Like, I need to bring you one. They were soft, they were rich, they had just the right amount of like moisture to them. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to figure out kind of how these are start playing off of each other like that. And I think we did talk about that. I think Caroline mentioned too that if you bake a cookie with all allulose, well, you probably wouldn't be happy with it. But now all of a sudden you start getting to mix these different sugars together and sugar replacers together, and you can achieve some really cool stuff. So. And that's just part of, I guess I'm kind of a food geek when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting to figure out how this stuff works and how they can work in tandem. And this is all, for me, this is all new. This is kind of a new part of this. I think Caroline was talking about it as well, that some of these, the way they kind of work together is kind of a new, interesting thing. And that's kind of, I guess the next step, I think, at least for me anyway, is just trying to figure out how do you work these things together and make something that's really great.
Yeah, for me too. It's something it's fun to learn. It's fun to experiment with, and then seeing things that maybe before were like, okay, well, this is all right, and then like, wow, maybe making just this one little switch was huge. So, well, thank you for taking the time to share the results of your science experiment in your freezer. And I look forward to working with you on more projects soon.
Absolutely, same here.
All right, thanks, Zach.
All right, thank you.
So a huge thank you to all of our incredible guests, Carolyn Ketchum of All Day I Dream About Food, Ben McLaughlin, our go-to resource for all things gluten-free baking, Chef Zach Miller, instructor at Gnocchi, and also Amy Davis, of course, registered dietitian who is expert in all things plant-based sweeteners and lots of other things as well. And of course, our entire Oxnard Eat Fit team for really helping pull together this incredible event that we did with Gnocchi. Gnocchi for hosting us and providing all of their expert resources. And then, of course, the Swerve team for even making such an amazing event even possible. So a huge thank you to everyone for helping to pull off the event and also helping us pull off this podcast, our first ever with 5 people. So it was a lot, I know, but I personally loved hearing the back and forth, hearing what they're actually learning from each other, kind of the ideas generated, the brainstorm there. So again, a huge thank you to all of our amazing guests for joining us today. As always, I'll include the links that we talked about in the show notes of this episode, and let me know what you think. We covered a lot of stuff, a lot of new stuff. As you start experimenting with these, I want to hear about it. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.